it's the corniest thing ever, but that relationships are like gardens
Mm-hmm.
and that you have to water them and you have to put intentionality into it and you have to make your time together a priority and you have to schedule dates and you have to schedule sex if it's not naturally working. Like and I think it needs to bring us back to that nostalgic time when you first get together with someone and you get ready for a date.
Hey, pod people. Welcome to this week's episode of Why Do People Do That? We are very excited to have a guest here today. We have Heather Simonson, LCSW, and she is here to talk to us about sex. Heather, please introduce yourself to our pod people. Tell them about yourself.
Thank you, Heather and Stacey, for having me.
Thank you for
I'm
being
very
here.
excited. Well, what can I tell you about myself? I think the most important thing is that I'm a mom of two amazing kids. I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. Oh, 15. My bad. He just turned 15 last week. I can't believe I just said that. And I'm also, as you said, an LCSW, a certified sex therapist and sexuality educator. And I'm also a yoga teacher and Reiki master. I opened Sea Change Holistic Wellness Center in Lindenhurst that has all of those under one roof. So it's like a one-stop shop for all your wellness needs. So
Wow.
it's really a wonderful thing to be able to offer all of these gifts, I think they are, for people and tools. And I'm really happy to be here to talk about some of that tonight with both of you.
We're excited to have you. So
Thank
many
you.
questions.
Can't wait.
So many.
Go for it. Got a question?
I mean, I guess what is the most common presenting problem that couples bring to you?
Wow, that's a really good question.
And I would imagine you don't only work with couples, right? There's probably individuals
not.
also that are coming in with questions with regard to sex or sexuality.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I rephrase. What is the most
Yeah.
common presenting
No,
problem an individual might bring to you?
No, I think it's a great question to keep it on the couples, but it's not. I mean, I work with all ages, right? So as a sex therapist, you're working with even some kids who are just having trouble with puberty or who are coming into figuring out what their orientation is or their gender identity. So like it's really the gamut of everything related to sexual and reproductive health. So
Hadn't even considered kids.
Yeah.
Like when thinking sex therapist, I was thinking, individuals and couples. Yeah.
No, it's
Wasn't even like
everything
kids weren't even on my
related.
radar, but of course
People
it
who deal
absolutely
with
makes
fertility issues, people who are dealing with sexual trauma, people, I'm a tantra teacher also, and so people who are just looking to enhance and spice up their sex life. So it really runs the whole entire gamut. But to answer your question, the first thing that pops into my head really is communication, right? Like, I mean, so I don't know if you both ever talk about the 5 love languages, but just like literally the basics of even just that, of like missing the mark on how do you show love to your partner, or how well is your love received. I think there's a lot that happens there. And then in terms of the sexual piece, most oftentimes I would say probably the most common thing is couples who are coming who are parents and that their sex lives changed when they got pregnant or after they had children. The other one would be, I would say, a discrepancy in desire. And so a lot of people who, one person
like the mismatched libido.
Correct, exactly. Mismatched libido. Perfect way to say
It
it.
comes up a lot. We see that so much in the practice.
You do, huh?
We do a lot. So maybe if you could speak a little bit more to that, I think that would be great, because I think a lot of our listeners and our viewers probably struggle with a lot of these things. They struggle with the mismatched desire, the communication. And I think, the first thing you said was about, the way that the sex life changes after becoming parents. I mean, I wonder if maybe that's a good place to start. Why is that? What happens when two individuals and a couple, become parents? How does that shift, their sex life and the way that they are interacting with each other?
Where do you even start with that? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that when a new mom arrives, right, and
Mhm.
even if she's not giving birth herself,
Mhm.
um, where does all of your energy go? Your energy
Mhm.
goes to your
Child, yeah, the
child.
newborn.
It goes even if it's not a newborn, right? Even if it's like you're adopting a child, or if even more so for people who have fertility issues, who have put so much of their time, effort, money, their body through fertility treatments, like you become just exhausted,
Yeah.
drained, right? And then when you have kids, what's that phrase, touched out, right? Like
Yes.
a lot of parents get really touched out,
Mhm.
especially if they're also then going back to work after a couple of months or can't even take off for a couple of months. And then their energy is being spent on, doing a good job if they're going back to work.
Yeah.
And even if they are staying home, which stay at home parents, I think is probably the most difficult job, even though it doesn't give you a paycheck.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that
I
can be
agree.
even more draining. I mean,
Mhm.
you started Club Mom how many, years ago. And so
Mhm.
that was part of I think, part of the mission is like giving moms a place to go to refresh and connect. And so, being just having so much of your energy just focused in other places. You don't have much left a lot of times for yourself, much less a partner.
Mhm.
And I think that that's oftentimes what winds up happening.
So a light just went off in my brain when you reminded me about Club Mom. And that was 15 years ago that I tried to start that business. And I brought that up in another podcast. And so that was, for those of you that don't know, pod people, that was a wellness center that I started 15 years ago with the premise of helping moms find themselves and reconnect with their identity. And I think it was in my mom guilt episode when I talked about how ironic that that business failed because the moms didn't want to show up and take care of themselves, right? I mean, I was really trying to bring women outside of this societal norm of being there for everybody but themselves. And
That's
that's
right.
why it didn't work. And so, what I'm hearing, and this is where the light went off in my head, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, wow. So, a lot of the difficulty in sex with new parents has to do with the mom. Number one, her relationship with her body has changed. And if her relationship with her body has changed, right? I'm listening to you talk about infertility, and I didn't go through that, but I did go through C-section. And I remember just after being pregnant for I felt like I was pregnant for 19
You
years.
were.
It
You were
was
pregnant for a year and
the
a half.
longest pregnancy in the history of pregnancies. It was like it was more
Yeah.
than 9 months. I swear to you, it was like 19 years that
Oh
I was
my.
pregnant for. It was so long. Anyway, so I finally give birth, and I just, I went through the C-section, and then I had to recover from the C-section, and then I tried to breastfeed, and it didn't work. And I think I just felt so disconnected from my body. And I think that I just didn't view myself the same way. My body was different. I felt
Mhm.
different about myself. I looked at myself through a different lens. I didn't feel sexy anymore.
And I think, we're talking moms here, but I think the flip side is the partner too. Like, wow, I'm no longer attracted to that person that put on 60 pounds and just squished a human out of their vagina. Like, like,
That does happen
It
too.
it
yeah,
does
like,
happen. A lot of people who
Yes.
will actually
Yes.
watch their partner birth.
Yes.
oh, I
You
could
talk
see.
about like
Yep.
it kind of desexualizes them in
Hmm.
some ways, or sometimes when someone becomes a mother, right? Their partner may look at them, like view them in more of a
Madonna type.
like
Yeah. Hmm.
wholesome way. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't want to say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah, but like I
but
can't put dirty lingerie on you and do this or that to you.
when I just thought, right,
Yeah.
it does happen. I do
Yep.
hear that kind of
Right. You're my
thing.
kid's mom. Yep.
And when I look at mom, or I hear that, I look at you as that, it changes for a
Mhm.
lot of people. But yeah, I mean, they're like, you're expending yourself, and your body is, you're right. I mean, that even just going through pregnancy and your body changes, and your
Mhm.
body's different after pregnancy. And then again, I think it's a lot of the time and attention that is being even spent on nurturing mom, right? I
Mhm.
have someone who started an organization. Why am I forgetting the name of it right now? But it's all about what the mom needs really, and
Mhm.
giving moms the support that they need and not gifts. And it's like a really beautiful service because
Mhm.
you can register for massages and cleaning people, and that's like the kind of support that women really do
Need.
need.
Going to the bathroom by
Go
yourself?
being it or taking a shower or
Yeah.
being able to take a nap or
Yeah.
right, like just being able to have even that 5 minutes of privacy of just being able to do your own business in a bathroom,
Yeah.
can be like golden for people. And so I think that those needs are also not being met and just contributes to that. But, to your point too, Heather, I think like on the flip side, that partner also oftentimes will feel neglected. Like, hey, the attention is not on me.
Mhm.
What happened to our relationship now? And then that's where we get into, are you making time for yourself? Are you making time for your relationship? Oh, you have to plan sex out now? Oh, well, that's very unsexy. A lot of people
Oh,
say
yeah.
that,
I
right?
hated that. And
Having to
that's
schedule it in.
I think that's a really important thing to touch on, right? Because I found that happening for myself after I had a baby, and I see that coming up for my patients a lot, right? Like this. So my husband at the time definitely felt envy and felt uncomfortable with this relationship that I now had with my son because he wasn't getting all of the
The
attention.
attention, right.
And then I started to feel a little bit annoyed and resentful towards him, like like talk about feeling touched out, right? Like I remember just saying to him, like, I just feel like between my patients and my baby and my husband, like everybody wants a piece of me, and I don't have that many pieces to give. And I remember feeling
Yes.
resentful towards him. He felt resentful towards me because I wasn't able to give him the same attention that I used to. And at the time, because I was so exhausted mentally and emotionally and trying to reconnect with myself, it was really hard for me to see him. Right? It was really hard for me to see and understand and honor and validate what this experience was like for him. I wanted him to just get me. He wanted me to just get him. And so I started to kind of feel like, well, if I just have sex with him tonight, then he'll be happy for a couple of days and he'll leave me alone. And then it becomes the chore.
I hear it every single day.
Right. And that doesn't have to be just new moms and new
No,
parents.
it doesn't.
This could be, I could be working with a 50-year-old couple where there's the chore. So I think that may be something that's good to talk about, right? What happens when sex is not sexy anymore and sex becomes the chore because one person wants it more than the other person. And there's this imbalance of libido going on. What do we do?
Well, I think when it starts to become a chore, you have to look at your own pleasure. And if I'm being really honest, I
Mm-hmm.
think so. I think we really have to look at and, are you satisfied in your relationship? If it's feeling like you're doing a favor for your partner or somehow it's
Mm-hmm.
an obligation or it's this thing that you have to do, even if it's to get them off your back for a couple days.
Yeah.
But Stacey, honestly, that's not, I hear this on a very regular basis. I can't tell you, and it is more women that will say this. I don't know if I've ever heard a man say this. If I'm being totally honest, I'm trying to
It's
think.
kind of funny.
I'm sure it
But-
happens.
and I don't work with just heterosexual couples. I'm sure it happens, but I can't. It's every person I can think of. It was a woman who has said, "If I never had sex again, I think I'd really be okay."
I've heard that a lot too.
Now, are we talking specific age groups? Because I think libido and desire change as you get older and more mature too. So, I mean,
Yeah, I would say probably mid 30s and up. And again, I think I don't have the statistics,
Mhm.
but I think it's probably more often that it's parents, moms who are
Mhm.
saying that.
Where do you think that's coming from? I mean, I know that a lot of times it's the changing body and the hormones, and it's just the way it is. It's nature.
Yeah, but like you said, it's not even with it, parents of newborns. It's
Yeah.
even with that, you're talking about parents who have adult children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, in fact, more often than not, it's usually when they've raised their kids and they're kind of like, if I never had sex again, I would really be okay.
Yeah.
It's
I
really,
wonder what
it's
that's
really
about.
interesting.
Is it the relationship, you think? I mean, I know it could be a little bit of everything, but like, I'm wondering, what your experience has been with individuals and couples that you work with since you're doing a lot of this work. What do you find it is more often? Is it the relationship itself that is getting in the way? Is it, are women feeling like they're not being satisfied? Or women not comfortable asking for what they
All of
want?
the above.
Is it society? Is it stigma? What is happening that brings a person, whether it's a male or a female, to get to a point where they say, I can never have sex again and I'd be fine?
I think it's a mixture of all of those things. I think that there's a lot of sexual dissatisfaction, which is coupled with the difficulty that I think overall women have in asking for what they want and asking for what they need and saying yes to pleasure. I mean, that's like a whole nother podcast of
Mhm.
just like our ability to be able
Wait, I
to.
want to just
Maybe we should just
yeah,
park
let's,
there for a minute.
yeah. Hold on a second.
Let's
no,
talk about that.
Yeah, I want to hear more about
Because
that.
right now the pod people are just like, wait a minute.
Wait,
just
what?
stop there.
I think that's me. What's going on? So let's talk to them.
Well, what comes up for you all when I say that makes you want to pause?
I guess I want to hear more about it because I think, you were talking about the stigma and women not being able to ask for what they want or not feeling satisfied.
Or not feeling like it's appropriate or acceptable to ask for something. I think a lot of it might be societal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think that there are a lot of social constructs that have created these societal norms that female pleasure is just not important. The majority of people who come to me for therapy, for sex therapy, are men. They're the ones who are calling. And I have no statistics, no hard data
Yeah.
to solidify. This is just, I guess, more of an opinion, but I really feel like it's because the minute that something has gone awry with a man's sexual health, it's normal, right? To like even just the double standard that we have in society of like how many people men sleep with as opposed to how many
Oh, the list.
people,
Yep, the number.
how many people women will sleep with, or
Mhm.
like, it being cool that, a man has a certain kind of experience, but if it's for a woman, it's not okay, right? And she might be considered lots of derogatory terms. So I just think even getting to the fact that, women's pleasure is just, I think from a society is not a priority. And I think that women overall don't necessarily we make ourselves last in many ways. So now we're talking about adding our sexual health to the list of priorities.
Maybe it's time for that.
It's time for that. Like if we can't even go to the bathroom by ourselves.
Right.
I mean, now we're talking about being able to make time for feeling good enough to even want to be sexual. Right. So it's a lot of that. We don't necessarily prioritize that. So if we're having low libido, if we're having pelvic floor dysfunction, which is a whole other topic that we don't talk about, like female pelvic health.
Mhm.
A lot of people live in pain and with incontinence from childbirth or other things. And
Mhm.
we just kind of live with it thinking that it's normal. So we don't get the help that is very much existing, that is out there and available for us. And so we just think it's normal. So we just brush it under the rug.
Or it's a part of aging and
Or it's a part of it. Like
Mhm.
this is normal. This is what happens, right?
Oh,
And
it's just
so
menopause. I hear that a lot.
Everybody pees when they laugh.
everybody pees when they laugh. And but I mean, while that might have some truth to it, we don't need to be living like that. And really that's happening because we're not talking about the female genitalia and pelvic floor health and the fact that there are resources and things that we can do about that. We don't need to be living with that. But even with that, when you are peeing on yourself, do you feel sexy? Do you want to have sex? Even just that's another layer to even not having a libido. It's when women have those kinds of issues, it doesn't feel sexy, so they don't want to. But I think overall, I think that it's just not, it becomes less of a priority because of how, self-care is something that we have been, I think, taught to think is selfish.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about that a
Right?
couple weeks ago, right?
Yep.
I think
Mom
what
guilt
we were
and- yep.
saying, that what I was talking about was, the message we get, right? It's that whole airplane thing. Put the oxygen mask
Yes.
on
Mhm.
because you have to be able to be okay to take care of everybody else. We're not told put the oxygen mask on because you're supposed to breathe and you're human.
Because
and
you're
you should
important. Yep.
You should
Yeah,
just
I've
put it
never
on for
thought of that.
yourself, right? That's the message we always get as women.
Stacey, you just blew my mind. I've never thought of it like that, right? That is true. It's like, put this on so you can help someone else, not put this on so that you can survive.
I feel like women start to become resentful and that often are unaware of how resentful they are, that the message we're constantly getting is take care of others, take care of others, take care of others. And I have this theory, and it could be complete nonsense. I just made it up. I have this theory that a lot of women lose libido because they feel like the sex is serving the man.
That's right.
And they don't realize that it is also serving them and that it's okay that it's serving them. But it's almost like this power play of I'm going to take care of myself by shutting that part of myself down and saying no because I'm tired of being told I have to do for everyone else. I have to do for everyone else. And if you have a couple, right, where the husband wants to have the sex more than the wife, which is common because I think just biologically, men just have a stronger libido, especially earlier years, right? I think that's just biologically the way that we are as humans, right? So I think that women through the years just start to view sex as something they're supposed to do for their boyfriend, for their husband, for their partner. And then they start to create this idea of, it's almost feminism. Like if I'm going to stand up for myself as a woman, I'm just going to stop giving you sex. And it becomes this power struggle that is just totally subconscious. And now they don't have libido or they don't want to have this sexual connection with their partner, but they don't even know why.
Yeah, I think withholding is very much
Yes.
a real part of what happens in relationships a lot of times, right?
Subconscious, right? Like they don't know that it's
Subconsciously.
happening,
Mhm.
right? So let's talk about that. What could be some reasons? What are some really common reasons why? It could be a man or a woman. I don't want to just say it's women because I don't want the men out there to feel like we're just totally dissing them and invalidating their experience because it could be anybody. Why is it that people will really, without realizing it, withhold intimacy from their partner?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is resentment.
Yeah.
To
right?
punish them.
Punish
They're angry
them.
about
them.
something else.
That's
Right. So
right.
again, it goes back to communication, right? We're not communicating our needs.
I think that, but I don't think that that's always it. I still think that there's a piece of that a lot of women feel like their needs aren't being met and they feel drained of their energy, right? I think our energy, our like even just how well rested we feel, how well are we eating that day? Are we getting movement, exercise? And like those are their energy suckers when we don't have those things.
Yeah.
And so
That's a lot of our experience, I think.
yeah.
It really is, I think, as women. I think it is a lot of our experience. We're caretakers.
We are.
We are, for the most part, right?
We are.
We're
We
caretakers.
and I think what something you were saying about being able to receive, I think we also have a really hard time being receptive, right? So I
Yeah.
also think that because we're so geared and cultured to be givers, that learning how to receive is also really difficult.
Mhm.
And so that even when it comes to sex, right? Like I think there is that expectation that like we need to give and we're like to serve in a way. And so it may be that their partner it's not fulfilling for them. But I also think that there might be a piece there that women have a really difficult time in being able to be receptive, of just being on the receiving end, of not of not having to reciprocate.
Yeah.
Can you just receive?
Why do you think that's so hard for them? Is it just their role, the caretaker, I don't know how
That's
to
a good
just lie here
question.
and be selfish and just put the oxygen mask on?
And it's
Just
across
for
the
me.
board. It's not, like it's one particular age group or
Yeah.
one particular, anything. It's kind of across the board that women in general have a difficult time with that.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, societal kind of expectations of what, the women's role is in sex. And it is, for the pleasure of the man.
Well, think back to like when we were teenagers. right? I mean, I know it sounds probably so cliche, but it is what it is. And I don't think it's any different today, right? If you were sexually active at 16, 17, 18 years old and you hooked up with this guy and hooked up with that guy, you were the S word, right?
And it was never about you, us, women. It was them. Like nobody knew what they were doing, but there was no concept of, the woman orgasming.
We
It
were
was
pleasing the guy.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Like it wasn't even a thought.
that's a really good point, right? Like I think like I was, a million years old by the time I realized that women have orgasms too. I was like, wait a minute, what? That's a thing? It's like you learn first about the other side. You don't learn about yourself. You don't learn about what it's supposed to feel like for you, right? It's like, I mean, I don't know if it's different today, maybe because of maybe social media and technology. Kids are watching porn, right? We didn't have
exposed
access
to a
to
whole
that
lot
when we were
of
teenagers.
No, we didn't.
But I definitely feel like when I was growing up, when I was young, the message was more like, what are you doing for the guy? And that's what, when you were, I know it's so gross to say like I was 16 and hooking up, but I was.
That's the average age for
I was 16.
females too.
Please don't say that. My daughter just turned 16.
I am saying it, being
That
that my son is
terrifying.
15 and has a 16-year-old girlfriend. I'm saying it, but it is the truth.
Yeah.
It is the truth.
Yeah.
No, is it? I mean,
It is.
It
that's
is,
how
but
old we were.
Yes.
Nope.
And all my friends.
Nope.
Yes.
I mean, most of my friends. Can't say all of them, but probably all of them.
Yeah.
It
was normal.
It is normal. And I remember even back then talking about just like, if you went down on a guy, but like if a guy was going to go down on a girl, like that was gross. I remember it being considered so disgusting. And so like talk about where that, discrepancy comes from and like what we deserve or whether we can receive. I don't know about you guys, but back then I remember all of our friends talking about how like the guys would think that was just disgusting.
Nobody was doing that.
Nobody was doing that.
No.
There was no expectation of that.
Mm-mm.
Right. So does this play a role then in the couples, right? Does it play a role in the individual that's coming in for therapy that is struggling sexually? Does a lot of it go back to just never really having a healthy, comfortable relationship with it or feeling shame connected to it?
I mean, I think so. I do think that, there's so many layers to it. And I do think that one problem, talking about the pornography, is that where do we learn about sex from? When you really think about it, you don't have to answer for yourselves, but like, where do we learn about sex from? If we learn anything in health class, it's at best how to put a condom on, how to prevent a pregnancy at best, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll learn about puberty, right? I do puberty workshops. So like 5th grade, you get a puberty workshop. And then
they're super awkward and not really informative.
Yeah.
Even a school district recently asked me, like, can you take your 90-minute program and can you make it 30 minutes? I'm like, how do you want me to
What parts are not important?
That's what
right?
I asked
what
them
am I cutting
3
out?
times and I said, what do you want me to cut out? And they did not answer. They didn't answer.
Now,
and so like even with that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking like now kids have so much access to the internet and even like, Pornhub, like the genres and the kinks and the things that like you would never in a million years have been able to find 20 years ago, like, are a thing and are accessible and are readily available.
But then they
like
look
we
at
had to wait for HBO to like after midnight and like the squiggly, like that's how we were watching any kind of, and even that was softcore porn. It was like you'd see boobs, but like you'd never, see anything else.
Well, and here's what I'm so glad you brought up the snowy, what it's like the distorted, right? I had
my friend's basement.
I had a client one time who came in because they were into distorted images, pornographic images, and was so shameful and so distraught over it, and discovered that he discovered sex by seeing his dad. Well, not seeing his dad, but his dad used to watch porn on like the old school TV, the snowy picture with the little antenna ears, and that was his very first exposure. And and that's kind of to my point of like, when we're learning what sex is from pornography or from our friends, which is really where we're learning it from, right? We're not really learning it from our parents. We're not learning about what it is at school or how to do it, even if we're learning about how to put a condom on, right? So we're learning it by either doing or we're learning it from watching. And so then there becomes this expectation, I think, a lot of times in couples that that's what sex is supposed to look like.
That's not real.
And
this-
it's not real.
Right. And so when your partner falls short of that, or your couple, your sex life is different from that, it's boring, it's vanilla, and so then that's where all these people
I'm doing something wrong.
and there's all
My
this
wife's
shame
not
about
screaming in pleasure from this ridiculous thing.
or something's
that-
wrong with them, right?
Yeah.
They're like and a lot of times it's not like what am I doing wrong? A lot of times it's like something's going on with them, right? Like this is what I saw but that's not real. Yes, can people have sex that way? Of course. Are people really having sex on the screen when you watch a porn? Yes, they're really having sex, right? But it's
they're
scripted.
acting.
It's acting.
Yeah,
It's
they're acting.
fantasy.
It's for
it's
the
play.
Yep.
It's for entertainment, right? And so, but when that's where we're seeing and learning how to have sex, that becomes imprinted, right? It's called mapping, especially for kids. If they are seeing with all the access kids have today, it creates a mapping in the brain that's the kind of stimuli that is needed. And so like even if you start off with a good healthy relationship and you get together and even if you don't have children and your lives become, in routine, it tends to fail in comparison to what you're used to. And so then you think that there's trouble. And so, that's when we get into it's the corniest thing ever, but that relationships are like gardens and that you have to water them and you have to put intentionality into it and you have to make your time together a priority and you have to schedule dates and you have to schedule sex if it's not naturally working. Like and I think it needs to bring us back to that nostalgic time when you first get together with someone and you get ready for a date. Like every time I bring that up with a couple, it's like, don't you remember when you first started dating? Like how much time and effort you'd put into thinking about where you'd go or having the perfect outfit or like is your,
Buying the sexy new lingerie.
maybe
Shaving
by
your
right
legs.
or like shaving your legs or brushing your teeth or having a breath mint or like doing all those things. And so like we put that time and effort into making a planned date. So why does that become unsexy? Where does that become unsexy? Even when if you're in a long-term relationship with children, like that's, I think what's can keep the spice alive is planning out those times. Like it's a date, but somewhere along the way we get lost.
It becomes less important and other things take priority.
But it also becomes less exciting and it becomes like a chore. Ugh, we have to schedule in sex? How unsexy. That's not natural. That's not spontaneous. Like, no, but when you first started to get together, you would plan dates. You'd set a time. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to meet here. Like, we have to keep that going because it also teaches, if we are parents, it teaches our kids that we're prioritizing our relationship. It teaches our partner that we're prioritizing them, that this is that important. Like, I am scheduling in my therapy sessions. I'm scheduling in going to the gym or my yoga class or this. It shows the same level of priority when we're scheduling in our time for ourselves and for our partners
to be
and for
together
sex.
and to be intimate and to connect. Right. I think a lot of people tend to think that like if you have to schedule it in, something's wrong because then you're not being spontaneous. I find that sometimes couples come in and they say, well, it's just never spontaneous. And so I ask them,
it can't be now.
Is it realistic right now
Right.
in your lives that it can be spontaneous? Maybe sometimes it can, but maybe there isn't a lot of room for that. And that's okay, right? It's okay that there isn't a lot of room for spontaneity at this time in your life, depending on
circumstances
and what's going on and how scheduled you are in your life realistically, right? So I like that we're talking about tips and what couples can do. And I think that's maybe a good direction to go in a little bit. What can we do? What can the individual who is maybe feeling a little bit shut down in their own sexuality, what can they do to help themselves be a little bit more in touch with themselves and with their sexuality and understand a little bit what might be the wall that's in front of them or what might be shutting them down and what maybe also are some tips for couples that they can do to start to find their way back to each other.
I think those are really great questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that comes to mind for ourselves is doing anything that is embodied. It's really that simple for me. Like
What does that mean?
anything that connects you with your own body and pleasure, right? And it doesn't have to be sexual pleasure. So it could be you go to get your nails done. It could be you're going to get a massage. It could be you going to a Zumba class or a yoga class.
Mm-hmm.
It could be taking a bath or a long shower. Like anything that connects you to feeling good in your own skin,
Mm-hmm.
I think is something that is really helpful, right? Because first of all, you're talking about a lot of what we've been talking about is kind of running on an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The oxygen mask. Like, how can you give, even though we really should be doing it for ourselves, right? There's still that.
Just because we need to breathe.
Just because we need to breathe.
Not because we need to breathe for
somebody else, right?
Yeah.
But in order to be able to give to others, we
Yep.
do have to have that full cup or at least, somewhat full cup. We can't we can't give when there's nothing to give.
Right.
And so finding ways really to be able to give to ourselves and discovering or reconnecting with what does bring us pleasure, whether it's sexual pleasure or not.
Right. What feels good? Does a massage feel good? Does a long shower feel good? Does it feel good to meditate? Does it feel good to take a nap?
Mm-hmm. Does it
Right?
feel good to masturbate? That's the other thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is self-pleasure. And that's another topic that a lot of people do not talk about, particular to women. And so, even, if that is a goal of wanting to work on your libido and your energy, taking time for self-pleasure when you're feeling up to, like, I'm thinking of new moms, right? Like, maybe 6 to 8 weeks or a couple of months after, even in the first year, that may not be even on your mind.
Mhm.
And that's also totally okay. But whenever, like, that is one of the first go-tos in sex therapy, that when there's that low libido, being able to reconnect with our own bodies and what feels good, right? I mean, how are we supposed to give instruction, even if we feel empowered to express what we want or need, if we don't know ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's one way we can discover that. Plus, being able to do that on our own. We have all the power control. We can stop when we want to. If we're tired, we don't need to feel bad or like we're,
Mm-hmm.
needing to take care of someone else. And it also, engaging and connecting with that energy also helps to reignite it, right? So really,
Mm-hmm.
the more that we connect with it, the more
It will be, yeah.
it will be present, right? So like that whole concept of if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
Right? I think that does
Yeah.
hold true a lot for, in particular to women. I really do. I mean, I think it holds true to anybody. But I really think that the longer that we go without being connected to that piece, the more we can say, I can live without it. I don't need it.
Right. Because
And-
we allow ourselves to not have it and to not fix that. And so we accept that.
We
It's
accept
easier to just accept that than to try and fix it, because then you have to go into uncomfortable territory, right? And I find that with some of the couples I've worked with, and I'm sure you've seen this too, and so I'm definitely curious to see what you think about it, is sometimes somebody in the couple, and again, it seems to be more often the woman, but not always, somebody in the couple maybe isn't feeling good about themselves. And they find it impossible to believe that their partner does not see them in this negative way that they see themselves. I don't feel good about my body. I don't feel good about myself.
Yes.
I don't feel attractive or sexy or strong or whatever it is. So I don't want my partner to see me. I don't want my partner to look at me. I don't want my partner to touch me there because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And so some of the work I've done with couples is on coming into this place of acceptance that what they think about themselves and how they feel about themselves is not necessarily the same as what their partner thinks of them or how their partner sees them, or to be able to believe that your partner isn't experiencing you the same way you're experiencing yourself. And how do we kind of trust that and move into that and allow yourself to be sexy to them,
Even if you
when
don't
you're not
feel
feeling
sexy to
sexy to
yourself.
yourself. And that's hard.
It's really-
That's a hard one.
What do you say to people when they're dealing with it?
Yeah. So I try to kind of really work with and this is one of the things I work with couples on lots of different topics. It's really about that story writing, right? That we assume the other person is thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way. And, we might have this idea in our head in this circumstance, that I believe that my wife really wants me to be, have abs and be jacked and be strong. And she wants all these things. But how do you know that that's what she wants? Maybe that's the fantasy in your head. That's how you appear and that's who you are. Have you talked to her about how she sees you and if she's attracted to you and how she feels when she looks at you, as opposed to how you are seeing yourself and projecting that into her? And so we make them aware of the projection. And I try to work with them on where this is coming from for them. Where is the self-esteem issue coming from? Where is that fantasy of who they're supposed to be coming from? Where is the disappointment in themselves coming from? And to be able to understand that you're writing a story if you believe that that's what your spouse or your partner is thinking, when you have no evidence that that's what they're thinking. And the only evidence you have is that that's what you're thinking.
Right. It's your own narrative.
It's your own narrative.
And probably comes from someplace completely
It's your
other than your
own
relationship.
stuff,
That
right?
relationship.
Where's the idea that you're supposed to look like this or be like that? Is that what they want? Is that what you want? And if that is what you want, where does that come from? And is that realistic? And are you being too hard on yourself? Right? Can we be in the gray? Right? We're so extreme or black and white. It's this way or it's this or nothing.
Mhm.
And a lot of times if people are looking at themselves sexually that way, they're looking at life that way in so many different areas. So we start to look at
where the patterns.
all the different patterns are of that black and white thinking. And then we get to the middle ground of, okay, are we being too hard on ourselves? And where else are you projecting? Right? This harsh, super ego, really, right? It's this harsh, character or figure that's hovering over you that is, rejecting you or putting you down or judging you. And to know that that's just you, that's not your partner, that's not everybody else. And to be able to start to slowly let go of that through exposure. Yeah.
And as I'm listening to this, I'm just thinking what important individual work that is. And, being able to do that with both sides of a couple is interesting. Being able to have them kind of see that movement and that, way their partner's way of looking at the world.
Yeah. I mean, allowing a couple to be in the room, right? And letting one witness the experience of somebody else becoming self-aware, as long as that person is capable and ready and able to do that. Some people are not. They're more into themselves and their own experience, and it's hard for them to really see the experience of their partner. So that's where sometimes as couples therapists, we have to know whether or not that couple's ready for that kind of work.
Mhm.
But when they are, and the person can bear witness to the other person's experience of the projection and of themselves, it can really do a lot. It can create a lot of healing and then bringing them together in communication. But, not everyone's ready for that work. And so sometimes it really does need to be individual work, because having the other person in the room could contaminate the work if they're not ready to hear. And, they'll start saying things like, but that's bullshit. But, you're making excuses, or, their experience is not, they're not ready to hear that from their partner, that, oh, that's a cop out. They're not getting it.
It's very invalidating.
Very
which is only
invalidating.
going to further spiral whatever problems they're having.
Yep, absolutely.
No, I think those are all really good points. And I think when it comes to sex itself, in terms of that, it actually reminds me, have you ever heard of the vagina monologues?
Mhm.
Ever seen that? It reminds me of one of the monologues. I think it was called You Like to Look at It. And it was about a woman who was so self-conscious and had, I don't remember exactly because I remember many of them. So I probably convolute some of the stories. but he like I remember he just wanted to look at her, and like he kind of made her stay there, and he's like and she cried, and it's just like he just wanted to look. And I think that is an exercise I give to a lot of couples who have a difficult time in being receptive, where there's that discrepancy of kind of coaching the partner to be able to just hold the space for that person who is feeling that discomfort or self-consciousness, and getting that person to just be able to receive those compliments and being comfortable being uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys ever, I mean, I work with that a lot with clients, right? Whether it's right or wrong, or I don't know,
Sit
in
with the
between.
discomfort, the exposure of the feelings.
It's, right? It's exposure, right? Like
Yeah.
learning how, like, okay, so you're uncomfortable. Okay, so you're feeling anxious. Okay, so you're feeling, can we do things anyway? Can we do it afraid, right? Can we do it uncomfortable? And so I think that this is one of those times where it's like, it can create such deep healing. But again, I think it needs that coaching with the partner of like getting them into a place of being able to really hold the space.
Yeah, they have to learn how to do that.
And not shying away, because that happens all the time, right? Like if somebody goes and initiates and someone isn't in the mood, like what is their response to that? That's another thing that comes up with couples all the time. Like what happens when you initiate and the other person is not in this space? There's all this rejection, and they take it personally, and then they get
feel
suspicious.
shut down and resentful.
And then they get like, oh, you're cheating on me,
So
and
how
there
do
must
you
be
guide
someone
them?
else.
Yeah.
And so like,
That's a huge thing, right?
It is a huge
It's so
thing.
hard not to take personally. It feels like rejection, and it's painful.
It is
It's
rejection.
It's not.
It might be. I mean, it could be that it's about that person,
it's
but it
rejection
also
in the moment.
it feels like rejection.
Feels like rejection.
It feels like rejection, but it may just. I like to rephrase it of just like they're just declining your proposal. Like they just right. Like
maybe
just
you feel
semantics.
bloated and you're just not in the mood.
You're not in the mood. It has nothing to do with you. It's not. You're not being rejected. It's they're declining sex. They're not rejecting you.
I love that. Just saying it like that. It's not that they don't want you, they just don't want sex right now.
Well, and that's what I meant by it is rejection.
Yeah.
It's not rejecting the person. It's rejecting the
Activity.
act or
The act.
activity.
It's like, hey, it's like, hey, you want a cup of tea? No, thank you. I mean, have you seen that one? There's a whole tea situation to describe consent.
No.
Oh.
I'll have to look that up.
I'll send it to you.
That's super
I'll send it
interesting.
to you.
No, I want to make sure we talk about cheating because we brought up the word cheating before,
sure.
and couples kind of returning from that,
Infidelity.
Yep.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's really difficult. It's not
Yeah.
easy. I've seen it successfully, and I have seen it not work out. I would say that I think one of the biggest challenges I have found as a couple therapist is there's a lot of differences in definitions of what is considered cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has been really interesting to see different people's boundaries and what they consider cheating or not. The times that I've seen people are able to heal from it is twofold. One, when the person who cheated really takes true accountability and is doing the work to figure out what happened and how they can move forward and heal from it and regain their partner's trust. The other is the partner taking some accountability and not that it's their fault that they were cheated on. No matter what we do, we can't force someone's hand. It's never anybody's fault that happens. But I do think that oftentimes there's some accountability in how we were attending to our partner's needs, and not just sexual, but just even like, are you spending time together?
Are you helping around the house?
Are you helping around the house? Are you making, I have a woman that I work with who had a new baby, and she used to make her husband's lunch and like every single day for him, like lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, like do all these things. And when the baby came, like there was a period of time where she wasn't able to do all of that stuff anymore. And he started to feel like neglected, and so being able to like just attend to each other's needs and in those ways I think is really important, and to take accountability and say like, hey, our relationship is suffering because I wasn't able to attend to your needs anymore because things shifted. My needs weren't being
Mhm.
met. I was dealing with postpartum. I, you know, was distracted with work. I was like, whatever it was, for a person to be able to say, okay, I can see where I need to change,
Mhm.
make a shift so that our relationship is better attended to.
I think that's such an important thing because the person who cheated often kind of gets the full blame and like they're the asshole and, not recognizing that like there was an issue in the relationship that caused that person to kind of go outside of the relationship and look for something, whether it was emotional, sexual, anything.
Right, it's a symptom, right, of something that was not right that both people have to look at. And I think if the couple is looking at it through that lens of this person did something wrong and now they have to make it up to this person, I
It's
don't think
never
that's
gonna
going to work.
repair itself.
It's
Yeah.
not going to repair. It has to be, we're a system here, and what was happening in the system. And let's, the person who did the cheating, has to understand how their partner is feeling and what that partner might need to feel safe again. But the person who did the cheating needs their partner to understand why they ended up, it's a stress response in some ways, right? Like what led them to feel like this was something that they needed to do. Everyone has to take responsibility, whether it's cheating or whatever in the relationship. It's never just one person is doing something wrong and the other person is perfect.
I totally agree. And I do think for it to work, each person needs to take accountability, right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
can't even be that the person who was cheated on is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was neglectful to you." Or it has to be,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and this is just my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
it really has to be both people who are taking full accountability and responsibility and are invested
Mm-hmm.
in making changes individually and in the
As a
relationship
couple.
And I know
as a
that that's a
couple.
very
Mhm.
unpopular opinion, but I'm 100% on board with you, right? And both of us, have been doing couples therapy for a long time and working with infidelity. And, it just isn't going to work if it's just let's shame the cheater, right? Because nobody just wakes up in the morning and says, I'm just going to cheat on my spouse today because I'm an asshole, right? That's just not a thing.
Mhm.
It's just not. Right? There's something going on. And I think that a lot of people really just jump to cheating is wrong. You did something bad, and a lot of, I think, people who are cheated on, will end up feeling sometimes shame for taking the person back because the peanut gallery around them, right, doesn't want them to do that.
I hear
How
it all
could
the
you
time.
trust this person again? How could you give them another chance? How could you believe? How could you let them get away with doing this to you? And I think there's so much pressure for the person on that other side of the infidelity to feel like, what will everyone think of me?
100%
And
right.
that, so everybody else becomes a part of the relationship and that it becomes such a huge interference.
And then what I think winds up happening, and I hear this all the time, is that they live in silence because they don't tell anybody because of exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
A lot of I don't know if you both find that, but a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
people won't tell their family or their friends, or
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want, because they know that they're trying to work it out and they know that their family and friends will,
Yep.
they love them.
Judge. Yep.
They will judge them.
Yep.
They want to protect their friend or their sister or their daughter or their whoever it is.
Yep.
And so a lot of times they wind up then living in a lot of silence. I see it all the time. It's really difficult.
Yeah. I know it's hard, I think not just with this, but with most things. I think people have such a hard time just allowing themselves to be human and making space for that, right? Like you said before, sometimes things are hard and we do them anyway, right? Life is hard and there's just so many different things that come up for us in all of the different areas of our life. And sometimes we do things, right? That's why we have this podcast. Why do people do that?
Why do people do that?
Why do people do that? Because we do so many things that we question and don't understand. And it's never just because we're bad people.
No one is just an asshole.
No one is just an asshole. For the most part.
For the most part.
Most of the time. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's, in our yoga training, we learned something called the compassion meditation, right? I mean, we teach it every day as social workers, but it's just, just like me, you too also have that pain and suffering, right? So even just like that woman you were talking about, right? Like we all know there's some story, there's something that has happened along the way that made made us make those decisions. And so, and I think when it comes to cheating, it comes to couples, I do think that it's worthwhile. And this is coming from someone who has had infidelity. Not me, but I was cheated on too. And so like I can say that I really do feel as though that it really needs to be both people and taking that accountability to say like what can I do differently? What part did I contribute to this? And
yeah, it comes down to just knowing, regardless of what you're experiencing, whether it's, sexual dysfunction or difficulty communicating about what you need or just not having the time or not being spontaneous or not connecting or infidelity, we have to be able to just see ourselves and the people that are in our lives and the people we have relationships with as just human. We have to be able to see ourselves and see other people. And I think that sometimes we have a hard time with that.
We all have a story.
Yep.
Right? And we all come with all of our baggage. And so it is really hard, but that's why we do what we do.
Yep.
I'm so grateful for this podcast and, bringing awareness to the reasons and the things of what is it called? Why people do what they do.
Why do people do that?
Why do people do that?
Why do people do that?
It's just so perfect.
Yep. Because there's so many things, right? So many things that we do. So I'm really glad that you came here today.
I could talk to you for hours. There's so many questions, like even things that you've said along the way that I'm like, oh shit, like and that yep.
Well, I'm happy to come back anytime you want.
That would be great, and I'll be able to use words next time. That would be wonderful.
That's okay. That's what happens to some people when we talk about sex. Don't just
You've rendered Heather speechless.
No, but being able to have those difficult, uncomfortable conversations is so important, and having the people to be able to do that with.
We have to know what makes it uncomfortable, right? I think we always have to ask ourselves that, right? If it's uncomfortable, why? Right? Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean we don't do it, right? Sometimes we do uncomfortable things and we sit in discomfort, and we have to ask ourselves, that's interesting. What makes that uncomfortable? Because that's, whether it's about sex or whatever, right? That's what leads us forward and helps us understand ourselves. So being that we're close to wrap up, is there anything that you're thinking that you would like to say but didn't say, or anything that kind of ties us up in a bow in a nice way? Because we kind of went on a couple of different tangents in different areas and different realms of sex, and we didn't kind of only talk about one thing. So any last thoughts or advice for our listeners and viewers?
Well, I think I want to just take a second to thank the both of you for being able to create spaces like this, to be able to talk about it. And that's, I think my wrap up is that we need to have conversations about all of these things because we need to normalize talking about sexuality, right? It isn't just about sex itself. It's such an important facet of who we are as people. It's an important facet for us as women that we really need to reclaim this part of ourselves. And so I just, I think we just need to continue these conversations with our friends, with our coworkers, all in an appropriate way, of course, right? To be careful these days, or all days, I know that. But again, even with that, like how you were talking about how the other therapists get even afraid to talk about these things, I think that there's some fear a lot of times. And so if we can start to really talk more openly about sex and sexuality and pleasure and consent and boundaries and everything under the sun related to that, I just think that our world overall will be just happier and more peaceful. And that this is we're in a society where sex sells, but yet it's completely repressed also. So there's like
So
that double, it's
confusing,
so
right?
confusing. There's that double-sided coin to it. And so again, I'm so grateful for being, for the two of you to create space for having these conversations. But that's what I think we need to continue talking about this stuff, all of it. And I hope that we can do so with our friends, with our children, with our families, with it just needs to become more normalized, and so that we can live in a more positive, body positive, sex positive world.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because it's so true, right? We get such double messages, right? Like this is supposed to be something that we do. We get all these messages that we're supposed to do it, but then, right, we feel ashamed. We feel like we're not supposed to talk. It's taboo, right? Even therapists sometimes are uncomfortable when their patients come in talking about sex. Not all of them. But so don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
But sometimes, right, they're like, oh no, is it okay? Am I doing something wrong?
Sure.
If this man is coming in to talk to me about his sexual fantasies, and am I doing something wrong by listening, right? Because I'm a woman and he's a man, it's just like, why is it not okay, right? We have to really start digging in deeper and being more curious about what comes up for us, right?
Agreed.
So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you both
Yes,
so
this
much
was
for
wonderful.
having me.
Yeah, you know a lot, and you are
You know a lot.
so good at what you do,
Oh, you too.
and you bring
Stacey.
amazing
Thank you.
insights. And I think that everything you had to share is going to be so helpful to anybody that watches or listens to this.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So any last thoughts, Heather?
Nope.
Heather number one. We've got two Heathers in the house.
So
weird.
unusual,
I know that never
right?
happens.
It doesn't ever happen.
Yeah, I never have another Stacy around. Yeah. All right. So we're good.
We're good.
We good. Okay. So what's our wrap up? Pod people, remember to subscribe so that you can be reminded when new episodes come out so that you can help yourself and us. We are on YouTube and Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio.
Yes, you stole my one.
And-
iHeartRadio, and now we have a website.
And now we have a website.
Yes.
whydopeopledothat.com. You can come and visit and see all about us on there and find our episodes and all the different places that we exist. And that's it, right? So that being said,
Yep.
I am Stacy,
And I'm Heather.
and that's Heather too. And we are
Why Do People Do That?
We'll see you next time. Why Do People Do That is recorded and produced by Press Record Studios.